Good morning, second grade. Today is Thursday, May 7th, and I'm ready to jump right into reading with you today. Today I have chosen one of my favorite stories to read to you. And as we read that story, the skill we're working on today involves thinking about the author and the author's reason for writing the story. Now, do you remember what that is called? Your reason for doing something is your purpose for doing it. So the skill we're practicing today is called author's purpose. And I want you to think back to that chart that I had hanging in the window in our classrooms since October, I think it was. And it had pieces of pie on it, and it looked like this. And I hope you remember that we learned that determining author's purpose is easy as pie. And we said easy as pie because the word pie is spelled using letters that begin the words that tell you three main reasons for an author to write a story. The first one is to persuade. And hopefully you remember that persuade means the author is trying to get you to try something, or the author might be trying to get you to think in a certain way. Another main reason that an author writes a story might be to inform. And an author who writes a text to inform the reader is wanting the reader to learn something from reading the story. The author is teaching you some facts. Now, we read a story earlier this week that would fit in that category. Can you think of what story that was? Do you remember when we read Thinking About Ants? The author of Thinking About Ants definitely wrote that story to inform. The author wanted you to learn all kinds of facts about ants, and now you are an ant expert, thanks to the author and the author's purpose of informing the reader. E stands for entertain. And the author is trying to help you enjoy the story and hoping to keep your attention if the author is writing to entertain. So, as I read this story today, I want you to think, is it persuading or informing or entertaining for that the author wrote the book? The author's reason for writing the book. So today we are going to read Officer Buckle and Gloria. And it is by Peggy Rathman. This story has some great illustrations, so I'm going to move closer to the camera so that you can see all the illustrations. Officer Buckle and Gloria. Officer Buckle knew more safety tips than anyone else in Knappville. Every time he thought of a new one, he thumbtacked it to his bulletin board. Safety tip number 77, never stand on a swivel chair. Officer Buckle shared his safety tips with the students at Knappville School. Nobody ever listened. Sometimes there was snoring. Afterward, it was business as usual. Mrs. Topple, the principal, took down the welcome banner. Never stand on a swivel chair, said Officer Buckle. But Mrs. Topple didn't hear him. So it looks like they didn't learn their lesson. Now, the author did something here that I think is pretty interesting. The author said the principal's name is Mrs. Topple. And do you know what topple means? If something topples, it falls down. I thought that was clever the first time I read this story. Then one day, Knappville's police department bought a police dog named Gloria. When it was time for Officer Buckle to give the safety speech at the school, Gloria went along. Children, this is Gloria, announced Officer Buckle. Gloria obeys my commands. Gloria, sit! and Gloria sat. Good dog. Now look at Gloria. Officer Buckle gave safety tip number 1. Keep your shoelaces tied. The children sat up and stared. Now they're not bored anymore. Can you figure out why they're suddenly sitting up and staring? Officer Buckle checked to see if Gloria was sitting at attention. She was. Safety tip number 2, said Officer Buckle. Always wipe up spills before someone slips and falls. The children's eyes popped. Do you see why they're watching so closely? Officer Buckle checked on Gloria again. Good dog, he said. Officer Buckle thought of a safety tip he had discovered that morning. Now, do you notice when Officer Buckle looks at Gloria, she's just sitting at attention. Do you notice what she's doing when he's not looking? I love this page. Never leave a thumbtack where you might sit on it. The audience roared. Officer Buckle grinned. He said the rest of the tips with plenty of expression. The children clapped their hands and cheered. Some of them laughed until they cried. Officer Buckle was surprised. He had never noticed how funny safety tips could be. After this safety speech, there wasn't a single accident. The next day, an enormous envelope arrived at the police station. It was stuffed with thank you letters from the students at Natville School. Do you notice? Look closely at all these letters. Look at Gloria. Every letter had a drawing of Gloria on it. Officer Buckle thought the drawing showed a lot of imagination. Now, the author gave you a clue right there as to what's going on. Officer Buckle thinks these drawings show imagination. Are the children really showing imagination, or are they drawing what Gloria was actually doing? Does Officer Buckle know what's going on? His favorite letter was written on a star-shaped piece of paper. It said, "You and Gloria make a good team. Your friend, Claire. P.S. I always wear a crash helmet. Safety tip number 7. Officer Buckle was thumbtacking Claire's letter to his bulletin board when the phone started ringing. Grade schools, high schools, and daycare centers were calling about the safety speech. Officer Buckle, they said, our students want to hear your safety tips, and please bring along that police dog. Officer Buckle told his safety tips to 313 schools. Everywhere he and Gloria went, children sat up and listened. Look at what she's doing there. After every speech, Officer Buckle took Gloria out for ice cream. Officer Buckle loved having a buddy. Then one day, a television news team videotaped Officer Buckle in the State College auditorium. Now, this would be a really good place to stop and have you make a prediction. Can you predict what might happen after Officer Buckle and Gloria are on TV? What do you think might happen? Could there be a problem? When he finished safety tip number 99, do not go swimming during electrical storms, the students jumped to their feet and applauded. Look at what Gloria's doing there. Bravo, bravo, they cheered. Officer Buckle bowed again and again. Now, does Officer Buckle know what Gloria is doing? Does he think the students are cheering for his wonderful safety tips and cheering just for him? What does Officer Buckle think? Uh-oh. Did any of you predict that something might go wrong? That night, Officer Buckle watched himself on the 10 o'clock news. Does he look surprised? The next day, the principal of Knappville School telephoned the police station. "Good morning, Officer Buckle. It's time for our safety speech." Officer Buckle frowned. "I'm not giving any more speeches. Nobody looks at me anyway." "Oh," said Mrs. Topple. "Well, how about Gloria? Could she come?" Someone else from the police station gave Gloria a ride to the school. Gloria sat on stage looking lonely. Then she fell asleep. So did the audience. After Gloria left, Knappville School had its biggest accident ever. It started with a puddle of banana pudding. Splat, splatter, sploosh. Everyone slid smack into Mrs. Topple, who screamed and let go of her hammer. The next morning, a pile of letters arrived at the police station. Every letter had a drawing of the accident. Officer Buckle was shocked. At the bottom of the pile was a note written on a paper star. Officer Buckle smiled. The note said, "Gloria missed you yesterday. Your friend Claire. P.S. Don't worry, I was wearing my helmet. Safety tip number 7. So now they're together again. Gloria gave Officer Buckle a big kiss on the nose. Officer Buckle gave Gloria a nice pat on the back. Then Officer Buckle thought of his best safety tip yet. You know what his best safety tip yet is? Safety tip number 101. Always stick with your buddy. I love that story. I love how it's a great story about teamwork. Did you realize that Officer Buckle recognized that he and Gloria were a good team together? And there's a lesson in that story. And it teaches us that we're all better together. So during this time of distance learning, even if we can't be together, we can still think about teamwork and being the best we can be while we're apart. So keep doing your part. Keep having teamwork with your family and try to help them out and be the best you can be. Now, I'm going to refer back to our chart. Now think about that story. What was the author's purpose? What was Peggy Rathman's purpose for writing that story? Was it to persuade? Was she trying to get you to do something? Was it to inform? Was she trying to teach you some facts? Or do you think that the author, Peggy Rathman, wrote the story to entertain? Did the great illustrations and fun characters keep your attention? So what is your answer? Was it persuade, inform, or entertain? I hope you said entertain, because I found that story to be very entertaining, and I hope that you did too. Now, I'm going to tell you your assignment for today. If you look on your matrix, it tells you that you are going to tell a family member 3 safety tips that you will follow this summer. And you can do that. You can tell a family member about the story we read and about author's purpose and come up with 3 safety tips. But here's an even better way that you can get your assignment done. You can go on Seesaw and go to the activity that I created today that is called Officer Buckle and Gloria 5-7. And the instructions tell you to click Add Response, and there is a template there, which is a picture of Officer Buckle and Gloria. And you can click the label tool, the one that looks like a capital T, and click on that, and you can type 3 safety tips that you will remember to follow all summer. And you can put those right on top of the picture. And then if you can read those tips to me on Seesaw, then I get to hear your voice again. So that would be a great way to complete your assignment. So I hope I get to see some great Seesaw entries from you later today. And now we're going to do some math. Before we do math today, I wanted to introduce you to someone. This is Weston. He's back from Texas. And Weston and I are practicing safety tip number 101, just like in the book. Always stick with your buddy. And now you can go get your math paper. Yesterday during math, I assigned a vocabulary check for you to do. And let's go over that together. Remember our 6 words: data, picture graph, survey, line plot, tally mark, and bar graph. So number 1, you should have written survey. You can collect data by asking people the same question in a survey. Number 2, you should have written in the word bar graph. A bar graph uses bars to show data. Number 3, you should have written in the word data. Numbers or symbols that show information are called data. Number 4, you should have written the words line plot. A line plot shows how often a certain number occurs in data. For number 5, you should have written picture graph. A picture graph uses pictures to show information collected. Number 6, you should have written tally mark. A tally mark is a mark used to record data collected in a survey. So we'll look at your matrix for today. It asks you to complete numbers 7 through 12 on page 580 in your math packet. So that means you take yesterday's assignment, flip it over, and I'll go through the directions with you. At the top, it asks you to use the tally chart to make a picture graph. So you decide what picture you're going to draw to make your picture graph. Then you have 2 sentences to answer. How many students were surveyed? And how many students like hockey or football? Remember, you will have to do some adding there. Now, use the tally chart to make a bar graph. So you have another tally chart. Remember, when you make a bar graph, you fill in the boxes. You remember how I taught you how to outline the boxes and keep your crayon neatly around the box so it's nice and neat, so you can really see the bar. Here are your sentences to complete. How many students have been to the zoo? And how many more students have been to the zoo than have not been to the zoo? So remember how many more, ding, 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 subtract. Remember those 3 words should set off an alarm in your brain that says, aha, I can subtract to solve that problem. When you see how many more, ding, ding, subtract. So you do your work for today. We will go over the answers tomorrow, and I will be back tomorrow morning on Friday. Have a great day, everyone.